and welcome back to Seed Time and Harvest, where we're sharing you practical steps on how to grow food wherever you are. And so, Jose, the last time we were here, we talked about eggplants.
Yes.
What are some of the things that we looked at?
Well, last time we looked at the tips for growing it. For example, that it loves full sun.
Okay.
That it loves water. Also, we talked about the type of soil, that it loves rich soil.
Yes.
And that's what we looked at last time. And this, we also based it on a scripture. And I want us to look at that scripture again. Can we do that?
Sure.
All right, let's look at the screen here again. And that scripture was taken again from Mark chapter 4, verse 28. And it says, "For the earth bringing forth fruit of herself. First the blade, then the ear. After that, the full corn in the ear." And we're taking this idea of the stages of development, and we're going to apply them to the eggplant.
Right.
Because now we want to know the stages of growing the eggplant.
Yes. And while we're getting to that, we know that there's several different varieties of eggplants, varying in color and sizes. You have from white to purplish black. And so we want to show you how you can get your eggplants. Well, we also looked at different ways to start your eggplants. We looked at the Ziploc bag method, and we looked at starting from a seed tray. But also, if you want to bypass that step, if you have an organic nursery near you, you can purchase your eggplants, which have already been started, because many people are, for some reason, I'm not sure why, they don't like starting seeds. They prefer to buy the plant, I guess because it's easier.
Well, again, I just want to remind us, when we can't buy or sell, we need to learn how to grow from seeds.
We do need to
store the seeds.
Exactly, which I agree. I surely do agree with that. And here we have 2 eggplants that were started in this one container. And we know, of course, that our roots are trying to get out, so we're going to help them out a little bit. So we're going to put this in a different pot. We're going to separate these and put them in larger containers.
All right, let's do that.
Right. And we know this, tell us about the seed, this soil that you have in this container.
This is the same soil that we mixed last time when we met. And so this is the rich soil that we have. And we're going to just go ahead and separate those.
So of course, you want to make sure whenever you're handling your plants or your roots, you want to make sure that your soil is wet so you don't shock your plants. And here we have a good root development in this container. Of course, this paper is biodegradable, so it will break down, but it just doesn't break down fast enough for your roots to expand. So we're going to take it out. Instead of planting directly in this pot, we're going to take it out and we're going to put it in larger pots.
And as a reminder, I saw that some of the seeds or some of the roots were actually trying to make it through, but a majority of them did not.
No.
And so you don't want to make the mistake of planting it in that type of, even though it's decomposable, we don't want to keep it in there.
Right. And the roots look really good on this plant. They are not brown, they're white.
Right.
And you can
As we
see
looked
that
in the past, how we have to look at the roots.
Yes. The soil is really soft. So we have good aeration in this soil that they were started in. All right. So I'm just going to get a little more in here. And we're going to separate these. You want to make sure when you separate them, you have sufficient root on each plant for them to be able to survive. So just handle with care and gently pull apart. Try not to take too much of the root out of the soil as you can. So here we have 2 plants that we're going to put in this container, and we know now we're giving it more area for it to grow. So we're going to have bigger plants, so roots will be able to expand, and they'll just do really well. All right, there we have it. And I just want to mention, eggplants love water, so make sure you water your plants often. Be consistent with your watering times and do not let the soil dry out. Of course, just a reminder, if your eggplants are not watered sufficiently, you will have root rot. Your blossoms will fall off. So if you have your blossoms falling off your eggplants, they may not getting enough water. If you have blossom end rots on your eggplants, then it may be a result of insufficient watering. Or if you're not getting enough fruits, then your plants may not be receiving enough water. So we're just going to water these in, and then that will be it. Now, where would we put these eggplants?
Now, as we mentioned before, we want to have full sun. So these will be on a sunny side wherever there's plenty of sun. That's where we want these to go.
Okay, and I'm just going to put this back in here because the water is going to run out. All right, and now that we've planted our eggplants, how long does it take for our eggplants to be mature?
Usually they take about 80 days for the plants to mature, and they will grow up to 3 to 4 feet tall.
Okay.
And also, when you plant them in the ground, you want to remember that you want to space them out. You want to give them space to grow.
So at least 1.5 to 2 feet apart, because
Right.
they're going to spread. They're going
Right.
to spread widely. So you want to give them space so that they can be able to grow and provide
Yes.
much fruit. Now, also another thing I want to mention regarding the eggplant is that, as you can see here, the fruits are coming out. If you want to bring that plant in a little closer, we have fruits coming out on this eggplant. Now, the first time we planted eggplant, I let it wait on the tree for it wasn't a long time, but it stayed on there. And I didn't know when it was ready to be picked. So how can you tell when an eggplant is ready for harvest?
Well, some people think that you have to just keep it on there, and the longer the better. And that can be a little misleading.
Okay.
I know you mentioned before about the glossy.
Yes.
Can you talk more about that?
Okay, so one way to tell when your eggplant is ready, it will have a glossy sheen. You can eat the eggplant in any phase of growth, but that's one way that you can tell when it starts to look glossy. If it's losing the glossy look, then it may be old, and then it may get hard.
Okay. And also, you can touch and feel your eggplant. And usually they're actually ready, not according to size, but according to how they feel, their tenderness. And when they start to become tender, you'll be able to press them in and have some kind of indentation on them, and they'll bounce right back. But these, as you can see, as I press on them, this one is actually given a little bit more than the other one.
So that one may be ready for harvest.
It's maturing a little bit better.
And these are
because it's bigger also.
Yes. And these are the Japanese eggplants. The Japanese eggplant can be at least can go up to 10 inches long when they're ready, versus the Black Beauty eggplant, which is the bigger, fuller eggplant, when that one goes 4 to 6 inches when it's ready.
Right. And let's talk more about this one in a minute, but I want to bring our attention to an eggplant that we have. If we look at our slide here, we'll see eggplant. And this eggplant is actually good size, isn't it? And we placed it inside this bin here, and we put it right underneath the roof.
Yes.
And we were concerned because it was flooding out. It was getting a lot of water, and it started to rain. This is what you were mentioning about before. And I remember you said to me that we have to do something about it. And so I went and I drilled some holes, and the water started gushing out real nicely. So it had, it wasn't the soil that was not draining, it was the container.
The container, because this is a wicker barrel, and it wasn't, the holes in there weren't sufficient to allow all the water that was getting in.
Right,
because we had a lot of rain.
All it had was some cracks, and maybe the dirt was keeping it from going through.
Right.
So I put the holes in there with a drill, a good sized holes, and the water just started gushing out, and it started draining. And we still were a little concerned because it was flooded for a couple of days before we did that. But to our surprise, what happened?
The eggplant started thriving. Now we have a lot of blossoms. We have a lot of fruits on our eggplant as a result of that consistent watering.
Right. So these eggplants, how big are they now?
These are about 4 feet high. The bushes are about 4 feet high, and we have some fruits on there. Yes.
Right. Well, let's take a closer look, because I remember the scripture tells us that there's a procedure, a process that the Lord shows us that it's maturing. And so he tells us that. And here you see that the blossoms are on one of the eggplant.
And that's a beautiful eggplant. The color is nice. The blossom sets are really, really good. And we don't have any blossoms falling off this plant.
Right, and why is that?
Well, again, because of the moisture. It needs that water to keep the blossoms on. Yes.
So the consistent watering is what actually helped the plant.
Yes.
And it lost no blossoms. It was flowering very well. As you can see, there's a lot of blossoms on it. And all these flowers are very beautiful also. And in our next slide here, we see that it also has an egg-looking plant on it.
Yes. It's dropping like an egg. It looks really beautiful. And that's a black beauty eggplant.
That's right.
That's
and
really
so
nice.
that's where it gets the name from, the eggplant. It's, when it starts dropping, it looks just like an egg, as you can
Yes.
see from the
A garden
slide.
egg. And that's beautiful.
And this
Which
is
is
the process of which the eggplant will mature. And that's what the Lord was talking about in the parable, understanding how the eggplant
stages.
matures. And then he also talks about harvesting. And that's what we were mentioning about with this plant here. Checking it and seeing that you get that bounce back into that tenderness as you
Yes.
push into it. So this one is right about ready. This one does not feel like it's ready. So as you slightly press on it, not too hard because you don't want to bruise it, you check and see if it's ready.
Yes.
So you're not looking at the size so much as the tenderness of it.
And we have a history with this plant. A few weeks ago, we looked at this eggplant and we looked at the leaves because in comparison to the other eggplants that we have, we realized that this particular plant is looking slightly on the yellower side.
That's true.
It's losing its green. And so in the next time we're here, we're going to look at, okay, what is this eggplant lacking? Because we mentioned eggplants are heavy feeders. And it needs a lot of nutrients for the plant to be productive. So unlike the other eggplants that we have, this one is not, for the size that it is, it's not as productive as the others. So join us again and we're going to show you what can we do to make our eggplants more vibrant and productive.
Right, because according to the Lord, the earth will give forth its own fruit.
Right.
And so that earth is the good soil according to the other scripture. As we compare the scriptures, that earth needs to be good ground.
That's right.
And so we're going to test this soil and find out what it is lacking, if it is lacking anything.
All right.
Stay tuned and join us. As we grow together, we're also learning how to grow food.
All right, and happy planting, everyone.